We are the anchors of Queer News Tonight, and this evening we discuss the queer headlines. A poll reveals that misinformation over transgender issues significantly influenced undecided voters, ultimately favoring Trump in 2024. Trans-targeted ads spread falsehoods, impacting public opinion. Swing voters moved 2-1 for Trump over Harris, and they say trans issues were the #1 reason why. Ironically, this news breaks on Transgender Day of Remembrance.
Trans and non-binary voices are missing in U.S. clinical trials. PAN Foundation bridges gaps, promoting inclusion and equitable health care for all. PAN Foundation is fighting these barriers, urging inclusion for fair health care.
After Trump's win, Project 2025 threatens LGBTQ adult content creators' free expression through bans and imprisonment. Will gay adult content become illegal in America?
While promoting her book on the Today Show, Cher drops the F-bomb.
Denzel Washington provides an update to his same-sex kiss cut from the theatrical release of Gladiator 2.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ+ daily evening television news, broadcasting live and available on demand on your favorite streaming channels. We're proud to announce that YouTube has recognized Queer News Tonight, certified by analytics company vidIQ, and we now have more than 10 million views on the only daily live queer news show in the world. We're proud that we have more than 1,000 new subscribers in October, and that Queer News Tonight has more YouTube subscribers than any other LGBTQ+ brand in Florida. Over 500,000 of you have watched this show in the last 60 days. We thank you for watching and supporting our voice in our community. It is Wednesday, November 20th, 2024. We are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ evening news show. Whatever happens unique in LGBTQ news, you will see it and hear it.
Hotspots Magazine Happening Out Television Network is a nonprofit 501c3 media company in the same model of PBS and NPR, but designed for the LGBTQ community. Our mission is to support the 11 pillars of our LGBTQ community. We want to inform and educate the key issues of lesbian, trans, Latino, Black, healthcare, seniors, students, faith, social justice, business, and queer culture. Help us support our community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ nonprofit media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
In 2025, our magazine is celebrating 40 years of the LGBTQ experience, and our television, news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ and broader community.
Let's meet tonight's anchors at Queer News Tonight. Let's welcome TriniDaddy. This artistic talent is a violinist and pianist with the Miami City Ballet and is the program director for the Seminole Theater Players in Homestead. TriniDaddy, so Orchestra Miami is bringing Puccini's legacy on November 23rd at Miami Scottish Rite. I love that. Tell me what's happening.
Well, it is Puccini's 100th, anniversary of his death. And if you don't know anything about Puccini, he writes the most beautiful, haunting melodies. If you know Madame Butterfly or Nessun Dorma from Turandot or Suor Angelica, these are incredibly beautiful, beautiful, haunting, intensely emotional melodies. So we're going to be performing with some singers, just some stage versions of many of the songs from the arias from the operas, and it will be at the Scottish Rite Masonic Temple. Has any of you been to the Scottish Rite?
I want to after you talked about it.
It's one of the oldest buildings in Miami, and it is like, I don't know if you've ever seen Eyes Wide Shut. Mm-hmm. It is like one of these type of buildings with half floors and passageways with Colonel Mustard and Mrs. White or whatever. Like, it is, I get lost every time I go in the door to even find where the auditorium is. It's a really cool space. So you should come out and check it out if you're an opera lover. And if not, just to see this space is pretty cool.
Right? I love that. Where can people get tickets?
Orchestra Miami .org. Google it. Orchestra Miami. There it is. OrchestraMiami.org.
There you go. All right. Puccini's Legacy. Go get your tickets. Next up, let's welcome anchor Scott Galvin. He's the executive director of Safe Schools South Florida, providing a safe space for LGBTQ plus youth and a member of the North Miami City Council. He's the longest serving LGBTQ legislator in the state of Florida. Scott also sits on the board of directors for the AIDS Healthcare Foundation and volunteers with the Florida LGBTQ Democratic Caucus. Welcome back, Scott. You haven't been here in a minute, kid.
I know, I'm old. I usually have to be in bed by this point in the day, so I'm glad you guys have allowed me to stay out past my bedtime.
Whatever. You came all the way from Miami and you stamped your passport. We're happy that you're here,
That's
Scott.
right.
Welcome
You guys
back,
gotta
baby.
do the same. Come on down to Dade County.
For sure. Next up, let's welcome anchor Dr. Bobby Huen. He's a certified civil and family mediator and a founder of BH Conflict Resolution Services. From Hong Kong and having grown up across the world, he can offer a queer global perspective on current events. Welcome back, Bobby. Any good fights lately at work?
No, mostly insurance stuff. Very boring, but that's okay. Boring is good.
But I bet you make it fun. Come on, Bobby, it's you.
But actually, right now, there's a state insurance crisis. I'm watching it very closely. We are on the cusp of basically insolvency of even Citizens, our state-owned insurance company.
God, Citizens.
So-
Please don't even say that word in my house.
Yeah, so sorry. I mean, that's where we are at, especially now with Helene and Milton claims going to come in hard and fast, too.
Oh, Lord. Well, okay, we'll send you good vibes. Keep on working hard, Mr. Huen. Let's welcome Alex Morash. Alex has written for The Advocate and served as editor-in-chief of Options magazine. He's also served as media director of the National LGBTQ Task Force and press secretary for the Florida Democratic Party. Welcome back, Alex. I'm so happy that you're on the table today. You're on the table.
Well, only if you pay for dinner first, Faye. Goodness, I'm just very excited to be here today. It's going to be a wonderful show, and I always want to remind viewers for this week to don't forget to pick up tomorrow's copy of Out South Florida to read my latest piece.
Yes, all right.
And I also think it's time that we say that and of course, this is tonight's lead anchor, FayWhat. She is a legendary events host, television and radio personality, and the host of the FayWhat Show on Mondays. Faye, the annual World AIDS Day Candlelight Walk and Vigil is on Sunday, December 1st. It begins at Hagen Park and concludes at the Pride Center. Tell me what's happening, Faye.
World AIDS Day is happening, and it's December 1st, and it is a Sunday, okay? So come on out and join us. The Broward House and Jana Jaffe are doing a great thing by having this candlelight vigil. We're going to start, like you said, at Hagen Park, right at 5:30 with our candles ready, thinking about the folks that we have lost and the folks that are still thriving and living with HIV, all right? So we start at 5:30, and then our program starts at 6:30 at the Pride Center at Equality Park. So make sure that you come on down and you support. And, you know, it's an important day, December 1st. We'll be talking about that on future shows. But, you know, it's a Sunday. So do everything that you have to do and then come join us over at Hagen Park. And then we'll walk over to the Pride Center for our national Day of Remembrance when it comes to all those that we've lost to AIDS, people that are living and thriving, and a whole lot more. Thank you so much to Broward House for allowing me to host this event, and I will see you all there. We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news. For Wednesday, November 20th, 2024. First this evening, let's queer up the USA view. New survey, Trump spent tens of millions against trans, won swing voters and the election. A significant post-election poll reveals how misinformation about transgender issues swayed swing voters in Donald Trump's favor during the 2024 elections. Trump and the GOP spent more than $35 million to convince voters that schools were supporting trans health care and surgery. Ads claimed that Harris supported taxpayer trans surgery for prisoners. On the day after the election, MSNBC's Morning Joe hosts focused on trans issues being a key issue for defeat. Joe Scarborough discussed the Harris attack ad about her support of trans surgery being paid by taxpayers for prisoners. Scarborough said, quote, "I'm telling you, that ad had a bigger impact than any ad that ran," end quote. Other hosts discussed the policy was actually created by Trump's administration. Critics point out Harris was reluctant to take on the falsehoods of the Trump attacks. LGBTQ advocates said in the first days after the election that Morning Joe was wrong and was attacking the trans community and others. And the other issues were the real election defeat. Today's new poll released by Blueprint suggests that swing voters were highly influenced and believed those deceptive ads, and that helped to decide the election. The Blueprint poll found that undecided voters who made last-minute decisions overwhelmingly supported Trump, with 52% backing him compared to just 38% for Kamala Harris. Central to their choice was the belief in misleading narratives about transgender rights. Among Trump swing voters that made their decision in the last week, 83% believed Harris supported taxpayer-funded transgender surgeries for undocumented prisoners, a policy rooted in constitutional rights and crediting her campaign. Similarly, 77% thought Harris backed minor transitioning genders without parental consent, another falsehood. Trump's campaign capitalized on these narratives, though through hateful ads targeting the trans community and misrepresenting Harris's stance on transgender issues and other policies. Other misconceptions included claims that Harris wanted to ban gas-powered cars, allow abortion up to birth, and unilaterally enforce reparations. None of these are positions Harris endorsed, but Trump's rhetoric and targeted ads reinforced these falsehoods. AI-generated videos spread lies about her and her running mate. One fake video of a Haitian man claimed the man voted twice in two different counties in Georgia, and it was later discovered to be fake content created by Russian influence actors. Another was that Governor Walz had a gay relationship with a student. The most significant finding in that poll was that swing voters in battleground states making a decision in the last week favored Trump significantly over Harris. These swing voters said the number one issue against Harris was over trans issues. It was a great reason for their vote, according to these swing voters, than the economy, immigration, abortion, and other issues. This helps explain why the GOP and Trump spent so much money on anti-LGBTQ messages. It is now clear the election has helped us realize the power of misinformation in shaping public opinion, particularly on LGBTQ rights. As the community continues fighting for equality, the spread of falsehoods highlights the urgent need for fact-based advocacy and voter education. Wow, that's a lot to unpack. And I'm glad that Alex is on the panel today, because Alex, you just wrote something that's going to come out next week pertaining to exactly our story tonight.
Specifically talking about this idea of blaming the trans community for the Democrats' loss. So, you know, I was noticing with like this particular poll, first off, the people that we call like undecided, that was about 7% that decided to vote in the last week. People forget the LGBTQ community is actually a very large voting bloc. We're actually about 7.6% of the adult population. For people that don't understand that when attacking our community and saying, oh, the trans issue is the problem, we represent in Florida alone about 800,000 people that showed up to the polls, and nationally about over 11 million. And people don't realize from last cycle to this cycle, Harris outperformed Biden by 22 points with our community, only group that she did so well with. And I keep hearing, whether it be Democratic members of Congress, people talking like Morning Joe, you know, Joe Scarborough and Nima Linsky, I've had enough with the two of them. They should just stick at Mar-a-Lago for the rest of the year. But like, people that 22% shift represents 2.5 million voters nationally that went towards Harris. And people look at that, they come up with all these different answers trying to explain it. I'm like, well, if you look at the final vote count, she underperformed Biden by 5-6 million votes, which is far more than what Trump did and gained. And I end the piece with saying, you know, Harris didn't lose over trans issues. Harris lost because millions of voters looked at Harris and looked at Trump and decided neither of them were worth voting for. And trying to attack trans people at last minute, it's terrible. You even look at that poll, other issues like the economy, were almost just as high as trans stuff. I don't think anyone looked at, when you asked them like, oh, I care about the trans issue, you really care about the trans issue more than like if you think someone's going to help you with the economy. They didn't think either was going to help them.
Yeah. Scott?
So we're at a moment of real reckoning in the LGBT community.
That's
I mean,
for sure.
I've been on this show in the past a couple of years ago saying the wolf is at the door. We are headed into a 4-year period where I think we could be facing our own Holocaust. And as a politician and a former history teacher, I don't use that word lightly. Have no doubt that this administration is going to use the courts in ways we've never imagined. The only way we're going to survive as a community over the next 4 years or 8 years or more, I think Trump, by the way, dies in the White House, whether that's a year from now or 10 years from now. I do not think he leaves office ever again. We have to have some really hard conversations amongst ourselves. We have to talk about what issues work in our favor and what issues don't work in our favor. It means that we're going to have to be politically incorrect amongst ourselves to reach some common ground, because our message, I feel, as a community has been so broad. We've talked about so many different things, from the number of pronouns to the number of pride flags that there are now, to drag queens reading to kids. We have to stop now and have some conversations and say, what are our priorities? Because we as a community have to be able to identify. We're going to have to scale down, come together. If you're talking about gladiators, raise those shields and get ready to fight, because it's going to be merciless. I think, and this is just me speaking, I think gay marriages are not only going to be outlawed going forward, I think they're going to void them in retrospect. I think that's the depth of what we're facing. So we're going to have to talk amongst ourselves, talk about issues like this, and talk about other things in the community. And if I can just throw one little thing in there, I try not to be too preachy. I guess as a politician, sometimes you fall into that. I'm only going to preach to the queer white guys of a certain age, mine and up. I know we'd like to feel that we had done all of this fighting all of these years, and we should be allowed now to rest. Too bad. Yeah. That's not the hand we're dealt. At all. We have to fight harder than we ever have before, and we need to be there in support of other parts of that rainbow in this battle, because it is going to be incredibly difficult.
Trini?
I agree a lot with what you're saying. My feeling of, it's not just Trump. It's, if Trump dies, all his supporters are still here that feel the same way. And in my opinion, the rise of Trumpism and that ideology was fueled by the radical left. And I think that the radical left has left the average gay person. I do not feel that what I call the elite gays, many of the people that even sit at this table that are involved in a lot of what's going on, that are doing great things, by the way. I don't want to condemn any of them. They're doing great things, but become very out of touch with the rest of the world, not realizing this is a complete bubble that we live in here, especially in South Florida. When it comes to the issues, Seth Moulton, Democratic congressman or Senate?
Massachusetts congressman.
Yeah. So that's in Massachusetts, right? He said, you know what, I don't think that trans women should be able to compete in women's sports. All right. You can debate whether that is, there's good arguments on both sides, in my opinion, but to immediately come out and say, nope, sorry, you've got to take it back, we're resigning from your camp. All of this backlash over something that is what the majority of this country believes in, and for a good reason. We do separate men's and women's sports because of male and female bodies. We know that there are differences in there. So for a variety of reasons, you may be on that train of like, no, we should include them or not. But at the very least, you have to say, I understand where you're coming from. And, that's not where I lie on that spectrum, but I'm not going to demonize you for this. And I think that our elite gay community, LGBTQ plus community, has been demonizing people. And I have been on the end of this for the past 4 years of trying to stand up for our community. I'm probably, when they were talking about trans issues, about being, a major reason why Kamala lost the election, I am on conservative media sites every single day. PragerU is one of the ones that I'm on. It's a complete trash propaganda site. But I believe that instead of censorship, more speech is what we need to counteract all the fake stories that come out. So they decided that instead of running conservative issues, they're going to run trans and drag every single day. And they have been doing that for the past 5 months. And I am on that site every day standing up for trans community and the drag community, informing everybody you are being misled. This is less than 1% of the population. The reason why you think it's a huge issue is because the conservatives are putting it in front of you, making it seem like this because they think you're stupid. And I do that every day, and I get called every name in the book every day because of that. And I think that our community, we do need to do a better job of scaling back some of the things that are opinions. And when we say, like, you know, it's an opinion, whether it's, you know, your definition of a woman or a man, whatever, let people have their opinions, let people have their religious beliefs. Say that you disagree with it, but you can't demonize them for it, and just put out yours.
No, I absolutely disagree, because
Bobby?
when you I don't mind that you have your religious beliefs. So obey your religion. But when you're trying to force your religious belief onto my life because of what you believe, which is what Project 2025 is trying to do. They're trying to push Christian nationalism. So that's basically anything that is less than white extreme evangelical beliefs, deserves a representation in this country. I have a problem with it. I can understand some of the trans athletic issues that has come out, but I'm not going to we are facing an opposition that literally, Sarah McBride, the first trans person going to Congress, is literally getting banned from her bathroom before she even got sworn in. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, literally said, "Yes, we are going to ban her from the women's bathroom." From the women's bathroom, because that's just how much we hate trans people.
Yeah.
These people are not to be reasoned with, because their hatred is their only rationale.
Alex, do you think that Kamala made a mistake by not addressing all these falsehoods that were being
Oh yeah, you know, people forget, in October she actually was interviewed on NBC News, and she was asked to talk about trans issues. She refused. She even said, like, her exact words were roughly around something about she didn't want to answer, and the reporter's like, but they're trying to, like, she mentioned that they're trying to spend all this money on me to define me, and the reporter's like, but I'm trying to ask you to define yourself. And she refused.
She wouldn't.
This is also, she was not the first Democrat to do that. The Democratic candidate in Texas said he didn't want boys in girls sports. Well, that didn't win him the election. He still lost. Seth Moulton, he's being attacked by the Salem Democrats in Massachusetts, because at the end of the day, when you go, like, the Democrats that are attacking the trans issue stuff, you're attacking your base. You really can't, like, as I said, that 11 million, we will not have a chance of winning the general election if the LGBT community goes down to 50% votes Democrat, or doesn't show up. And that was the other thing. People didn't have a reason to show up this election. Like, I worked for the party, and I almost didn't vote for a Democrat this cycle, because she was getting her economic advice from the chief legal advisor of Uber, also her brother-in-law. And I'm like, Trump showed us enough that you don't want family in the middle of your White House, for the love of God.
Yeah.
And this is what she did. And, you know, yes, it was a 90-day election, so, like, that's also a whole other thing to get into. But, like, you have to have a message. Or, as you said, you know, you're going to hear nothing but, like, this anti-social value stuff. And if you don't have a message as a candidate to run against that, people are just going to look at you and not want to.
I just want to clarify. I agree with you in what you just said. But what I'm talking about is when somebody says, I don't believe a trans woman is a woman. I believe that they're a man. Right. You can't reason with them and just say, no, you're stupid. You have to say, all right, well, if that's your belief, then fine, believe that. Like, you know, but when it comes to legal issues, then, you know.
We can't cancel ourselves. And that's, I think, what I'm hearing from you, and I totally agree with you on. I have trans friends who agree that trans females should not be competing.
I hear it too, but they don't want to speak out.
But they don't want to say it because they're afraid of being canceled. And
yeah.
I know, white guys of a certain age, white cis men, however you want to phrase it, who also disagree with some of the things that they hear coming from the younger generation, but are afraid to say something.
Yeah. No, I hear all the time from older white men that are like, okay, we should have just left the acronym how it was. Why do we keep on adding letters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, and then you get the, the trashing that I even saw at a public forum last week of white cis men, and then in the same literal sentence they say, but we still need you to write your checks. When you're the one that's being asked to write that check, how often do you hear that? Look, we've been super politically correct amongst ourselves. I think there's not a shade of a type of flag or a gender or anything that we just didn't embrace and say, yeah, that's part of our story. We can't afford to do that anymore. We can, if we stay politically correct amongst ourselves and don't have some of the hard conversations, we'll never gel the message to have a stronger message going forward.
But those conversations must be had. Exactly, just like Trini said. If in our own community we have, we don't all agree, right? But to fight, we all got to figure out what that common ground is and go from there.
Right.
Can I say one last thing about Kamala Harris? So people know that I'm no fan of Kamala Harris, but that's the best that we had at that moment. So she was put in a very difficult situation when it comes to trans issues, because she knew that that is a hot button issue and that she would likely lose the election if she were to continue talking about that and be as progressives want her. And it reminds me of Obama. Obama, you cannot convince me that he did not believe in gay marriage when he first ran.
But he couldn't.
But he couldn't say that because he knew he would lose. And so it was more important to win, make change, and then, change your opinion later. And that's what she was that's what she was doing this time. So I don't fault her for that.
All right, guys, we have to move on. We have to move on, Alex. I'm sorry.
I understand.
And trust me, this isn't the last time we're going to talk about this. Okay. So, Scott, what's next, my friend?
Let's queer up trans rights, transgender inclusion in clinical trials. A call to action on Transgender Day of Remembrance. This Transgender Day of Remembrance today, we face a pressing call to action, addressing the glaring underrepresentation of transgender and non-binary individuals in clinical trials. This isn't just a gap in healthcare data, it's a barrier to equitable treatment and understanding. Shockingly, fewer than 1% of clinical trials in the United States include transgender or non-binary participants. However, this lack of representation isn't due to disinterest. A survey by the PAN Foundation revealed that 65% of LGBTQ respondents are eager to join clinical trials. Despite historic mistrust in medical research, the LGBTQ community is committed to advancing medicine. Yet 80% of respondents stated that they've never been invited to participate in clinical trials. This oversight perpetuates exclusion and leaves the healthcare field ill-equipped to meet transgender and non-binary health needs. Through initiatives like opening doors to clinical trials, the PAN Foundation is working to change that. Their companion access navigators address barriers like transportation and basic costs while offering resources to combat mistrust. The message is clear. The LGBTQ community belongs in clinical trials, and it's time to demand more from researchers, policymakers, and healthcare providers. Inclusion isn't optional, it's an obligation. Every voice matters in shaping equitable healthcare. And for more information, visit clinicaltrials.panfoundation.org. Well, that's more of an editorial than almost a news story, but it's easier said than done. If you're not in the room when medical professionals are making the decision on who to include in the trials, and it's not probably simply made by looking at demographics. It's probably looked at a number of things that the drug company has as their, agenda for getting it. It's going to be difficult, despite the folks who say they want to be included, to get them included because they're not in the room when that decision's made.
In our last story, we were talking about, transgender folks playing in sports, right? So they're opposed gender. And without that needed data, we will never, ever really find out what is the deal there, right? That data is so important. If we're not counted, then we're not counted. If we're not all counted, then we don't have accurate data on anything. When I went through breast cancer a couple of years ago, I went seeking out LGBTQ and breast cancer. And I got to tell you, it was very difficult to not find a pamphlet that didn't have a blonde Karen on it explaining her breast cancer journey. It was very difficult to find out what the stats were for our trans siblings. It was very difficult to find out what, at what rates people were getting diagnosed, etc. So I can only imagine for other things in healthcare, it's the same.
And the exclusion of minority groups have always been a problem with clinical trials and medical research in general. But to address some points is that's actually we should encourage the overseer of these research. These research are often, if it is done at the university, they are overseen by the Institutional Review Board, which is IRB. As a doctoral student, I have to go through it, and I only did social sciences, but hard sciences is much more stringent. And these boards need to issue new regulations that would include more groups that are marginalized or otherwise not counted. That's how to do it. A bunch of doctors is not going to determine the parameters of the research without someone else's approval.
This was actually, I think this is a very brave foundation, because at the end of the day, they're taking on the big pharmacy companies on how they do their clinical trials. Like, that's really brave of them, because like normally when you're trying to do medical advocacy, big pharmacy you go and ask for a donation from, and now you're actually telling them how to do that stuff. So I thought that was great, because like, it really does matter. I remember there was one of the controversies when they were doing medical trials on HIV with AZT was actually done in Miami, where they tried to do a double-blind study. But AZT had such clear effects that people knew which people did and didn't get it, so they were sharing the pills amongst each other. The health officials were very upset about that, but like people were just trying not to die. And like making sure you actually talk to the community and have proper representation really matters with clinical trials. So it was great to see an organization starting to do more on that.
Plus, diversity costs nothing in this case. The medical trials already budgeted in to give X amount of people. It doesn't matter if the X amount of person are black, white, gay, straight, trans, etc.
Yeah.
So how do you think? You clearly have some medical background.
No, I have a PhD in I have a PhD in social sciences, not a medical
Is
background.
there a doctor in the house?
I actually never thought about it. When I read this story, I was like, oh, I've never even thought that we need to include trans people into, because it's just never in the conversation.
Because you're not trans.
And and then when I saw it, I was like, oh, well, it makes perfect sense. Not necessarily just for the social part of it, but because there's drug interactions. But trans people are generally, a lot of them are on
gender-affirming meds.
Yeah, and you have to know what those interactions are going to be with whatever drug is being tested. So, and as you were saying, it's such an easy fix. You can just get 3 or 4 trans people and put them in the trial. That any big city is going to have trans people there that probably want to be included in there. So it's an easy fix and easy solution.
One thing I'm going to do with this story is actually circulate it to some trans friends and say, are you even aware that this is a potential issue out there? Since the election, I've said to a couple trans friends, if you were to make, a top 5 most important trans-related issues, where would, women in collegiate sports and all, where would that come in? Would it be in your top 5? Would it be in your top 10?
Health and housing. That's okay. I went to a forum the other day for Trans Day of Remembrance, and that's exactly what the trans community, that's basic needs. Right. Is what they need.
Well,
it's healthcare and housing.
Being safe on the street, economic related issues, which is probably one of the things that the Democrats didn't push hard enough and failed in this election for. But it would be interesting to see if any of them, this is the first time I'm hearing of this as an issue in the trans community. Be interesting to see if even they would be aware of it.
Good point. Trini, what's next, Bevan?
Let's queer up social justice. Will gay adult content providers be banned, jailed, and worse? Donald Trump's electoral win could ignite efforts to ban pornography in the U.S. with alarming implications for LGBTQ adult content creators. Central to this push is Project 2025, a manifesto by the Heritage Foundation that calls for outlawing pornography, imprisoning producers, and classifying educators and librarians distributing sexual content as sex offenders. Kevin Roberts, Heritage Foundation president, claims, quote, pornography should be outlawed. Its purveyors are child predators and misogynistic exploiters of women, end quote. The Supreme Court's Miller v. California decision currently protects sexual content under the First Amendment. However, much like overturning Roe v. Wade, a right-leaning court could reverse those protections, threatening queer representation in entertainment and adult content creation. Though Trump denied ties with the manifesto during his campaign, he has confirmed plans to include Project 2025 contributor Tom Homan in his administration. In such circumstances, for creators and advocates, the question remains, is free expression next on the chopping block? Free expression, yes. Pornography, no. I have a hard time believing, even in this climate, that pornography would be outlawed, because that's what the internet was created for. I think I don't know if it's still the number 1 use, but it's probably still, or it's up there. Yeah. And that's the one moderating force in men is whether you're black, white, gay, straight, whatever. everybody likes porn. Everybody
porn.
wants their porn.
Everybody likes porn.
Porn
is never going to go anywhere, okay? Listen, think about X right now, all right? X is the biggest place to get all your porn needs, all right? I'm off X. I got off exactly the moment that they allowed racism and crap on there. I was out, right? I use Pornhub like everybody else, right? But, you know, Fab Scout is a movie house right here in Fort Lauderdale. Howard Andrew is someone that represents a lot of actors. And I asked him for a quote because I wanted to know what he thought about this, right? He goes, there's a lot more than just that. A lot. I understand their feelings, but cannot respect their votes. Arad isn't even from here, yet he claims to know about our politics, but not his own sexuality or work. Having this outcome threatens our entire industry. Project 25 calls for the eradication of porn, along with so many other detrimental issues. Now, I heard this AM, the group would like Trump to take the USA back to 1900, when America was great. I fear for my kids and grandkids. I fear for my industry and friends. I am not sure what the future holds, but my worst fear is that he may change things and count himself in as king and supreme leader, kind of like what Scott had said, our first story. But does that mean that the eradication of porn?
No, it's not going to be the eradication of porn. It's going to be the demonization and criminalization of those that are making it. Don't underestimate how they can use the courts against you. They overturned Roe versus Wade, which I grew up believing was like the third rail of politics. You could never touch that. You could never do anything.
It's in stone. I thought it was the Ten Commandments.
They not only overturned it, but they suffered no electoral punishment for it. It's not that they're not going to be watching gay porn themselves.
Oh, but they are.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. It's not that they're not going to be, but they'll single out the people that are producing it, and use them as an example. Already, for the last 2 years, Safe Schools South Florida, which just does like youth education and super innocuous stuff, all of our meta ads and TikTok ads are banned for being too political or encouraging sexual content.
Oh my God.
Because you're talking about queer and youth together. Others will define that as being inappropriate material for youth.
Bobby.
And that's where the danger lies. Not that they're going to get rid of gay porn.
Bobby, you were talking about the actors themselves, right? And that is who Scott's saying it's going to be the targets, the movie houses, the actors themselves. But you were telling me before the show that there's a bunch that have come out in favor of Trump.
Yes, there are several, including Arad, which you were talking about with Howard, but there's also this guy named Devin Franco, his actor name. He was outed by Out.com with his real name, but I'm not going to mention that, as a Trump voter. There's quite a few even younger ones who are, who are basically twinks. Conservative twinks, think about that. But the thing is, though, we are looking at, and this will not, if they're going to prosecute porn makers, they are no. It will be a blanket operation unless they can get around some kind of selective persecution of just LGBTQ makers. But some of the biggest gay porn labels belong to straight porn companies.
That's true.
And more to the point, red states are the heaviest consumer of porn. Doesn't matter if it's gay porn or straight porn. Red states and the heavier the Republic area is, the more porn they consume, according to survey year after year from Pornhub and other free porn sites. So
and it also could be too that it'll be the implied punishment. With Don't Say Gay in the schools, it's essentially wiped out gay-straight alliances or severely dampened it.
Yeah.
Not because the law now says you can't have the clubs, but teachers are afraid to sponsor the clubs. And because you have to sign a permission slip and take it home to your mommy and bring it in before you can join any club, you're also reticent to do that. So it's the fear that it puts over an industry by saying, we're going to single you out, we're going to punish you.
To be honest, Project 2025's definition of pornography is actually much more scary than people realize, because they single out teachers with images of drag queens as a form of pornography, and those teachers should be given, be viewed as sexual sex offenders. But one other thing I do want to say, I was talking earlier about, is Democrats a suicide to attack queer voters? Men are a huge part of the Republican Party. For them to go after their own constituents like that, you wouldn't have a pathway to victory, especially they made such gains with young men, and if they don't, they upset those guys.
They're going to lose them.
Yeah. So I'm split on it because, one is that with men, obviously, if it was something to do with women, sure, they'll take it away. But when it's with men, no. But I do want them to go after it. I do, because I feel like Trump and his administration has to do something. The only way that we're going to survive the 4 years and like get out in some reasonable shape is if there is some kind of rift between Elon Musk and
it is already
happening.
So that it exactly, or some other thing. The Joe Rogan supporters like, wait, you're coming for our porn? No,
that's where I draw the line.
Exactly, and I think something like this may work out into our favor. So.
Right. Okay. So more porn for our community, folks. We gotta support. Bobby, what's next?
All right. Next, let's queer up entertainment. Cher told Hoda live on Today that Lucille Ball said, "Fuck him. You're the one with the talent." Cher brought her trademark candor to Today's show, leaving the studio buzzing after dropping the F-bomb during a live interview. While promoting her memoir, Hoda Colby asked Cher about the advice she received from Lucille Ball after her 1975 split from Sonny Bono. Cher warned the story wasn't TV appropriate, but Colby insisted, "We'll just bleep it." Recalling the call with Ball, Cher shared, quote, "I said, Lucy, I'm calling you because there's never been a situation like mine except yours." And she said, "Fuck him, you're the one with the talent," end quote. Cher's jaw-dropping interview was promoting her new book, Part 1. She talked about being in an orphanage. She said Bono thought she was not attractive and really didn't like her and ultimately lost interest in her. She shared that Bono kept every dollar she had ever made, leaving her with only her clothes. The interview and her resilience demonstrated why she is one of the greatest LGBTQ icons in history. The interview is a must-watch for every fan. Well, good for you, Cher. And yes, I mean, as back then in the 70s, women's rights were...
Listen, Lucille Ball. Lucille Ball was a genius. She was incredible. She was the one behind Desi Lou's, productions. She was it. She dumbed herself down because most men couldn't deal with how strong and what a genius she was, you know? She did all that writing. Her acting was just superb, right? And she had to fight to make sure that she got what was entitled to her once her and Desi Arnaz broke up. Kind of same thing with Tina Turner and Joe. She left with nothing except her name, right? Same thing with Cher. This is kind of like a common thing that happens in show business. And unfortunately, you sign a contract or you sign whatever just to be the next star. And this is what you have to come up put up
so
with.
on point. I just want to thank you, Faye, for forcing me to Google who she was.
Don't let people know that. Oh my God, Alex.
But weird, odd fact with this story is...
You know who Cher is?
Of course, Cher is. All right,
just checking.
But like, do people realize that Sonny Bono was a former Republican congressman?
Yeah.
And this just everything you think about Republican Bono has proved in the story.
He died crashing into a tree while skiing.
Yeah.
And just want to know. I just want all the nerds to know too the importance of Lucille Ball, because Desi Lou's Studios produced Star Trek.
Yes.
If it wasn't for Lucille Ball, Star Trek would never happen. And therefore, every one of you Star Trek geeks...
You Trekkies?
The
people are queer and Trekkie. That must be...
The trackers must...
It's a big...
acknowledge Lucille Ball.
Yes.
Live long and prosper, Cher.
And the fact that she drops the F-bomb like it was like a big deal. She drops the F-bomb in like every interview that she does. You know, David Letterman from 20, 30 years ago. That's why we love her, because she has no fucking filter.
None.
And she just said, and that's what makes her a queer icon, is that she will speak her mind. And
when
she was so tame.
When she was doing Mamma Mia 2, she did the story about how she got the part, and she's like, "Oh, an old assistant of mine called me up. He's like the president of NBC now or something. And he's like, you're gonna do this. You're gonna love this movie." She's like, "Oh, sure, why not?" And I'm just like, that's the cutest story when you're like, "Oh yeah, my old assistant, the president of NBC." Anywho, next, let's queer up entertainment. Ridley Scott says bullshit to Denzel Washington's gay kiss controversy. Denzel Washington's claim of a same-sex kiss in Gladiator 2 sparked buzz, but now director Ridley Scott and Washington himself deny it happened. Washington initially told us to gay it.
I actually kissed a man in the film, but they took it. They cut it. I think they got chicken.
I was going to ask because I just heard about the Paul and Pedro forehead kiss that apparently got cut from the movie.
I'm not sure about that one, but
Oh.
yeah, I kissed the guy full on the lips, and I guess they weren't ready for that yet.
Oh man. Well,
I
I
killed
hope.
him about 5 minutes later, but
I mean, it's Gladiator.
it's Gladiator.
Check out the full interview at Gaiety. However, he downplayed the scene at the Los Angeles premiere, saying, quote, "They're making more of it than it was. I kissed him on his hands and I gave him a peck and I killed him," end quote. Scott, too, firmly refuted the claim, calling it bullshit. The movie stars Paul Mescal, Pedro Pascal, and Washington in Gladiator 2, which will hit theaters on November 22nd. And, you know, this is just one of the most weirdest, bizarre stories. He first said in that video, you know, I kissed him on the lips. Now it's on the hand, and he's killing him, and it's very complicated.
Yeah.
But to be honest, this movie...
We got the receipts now.
Like, viewers heard me yesterday say this movie, it's 20 years after the first one. I can't stand it. Now there's a new controversy where they cut a Palestinian actress from the movie, and there's a whole swirl about that. So whatever you think on that, it's just like, this movie seems to have more drama about about the premiere and the movie than the actual drama of the show.
Well, I already had an issue with Gladiator 2 coming out 20 years after the first one because I forgot what I did last week, so now I have to go back and watch that damn movie again, right? You know, how are you going to do that 20 years? But then, 2, I got pissed off because you come out on the same weekend as Wicked. You don't do that shit. You don't do that shit. Now, 3, I had no idea, excuse me, I had no idea Denzel was even in the movie until this drama came up, right? So this seems like a great way for him to be relevant, to be completely honest, right? Because he's like, I kissed him full on the lips. Yeah, they must have been too chicken and they took it out. Look at me. I'm an ally. Look at me. I like gay people, right? And all of a sudden, oh, I never kissed him. I kissed his hand and I killed him.
So, Faye, what's your prediction? Who makes more money this weekend?
Wicked.
Wicked.
Yeah.
Wicked.
Not
That
entirely
sounds like
sure.
We'll talk Monday. That's rough. Listen, I'm watching
assassinated.
Wicked tomorrow. I'm watching Gladiator Saturday. I'm watching both of them, okay? So
I think it's
I love Pedro Pascal. I have to
Go
go.
both ways.
I
Depends on the
think
day.
it's going to split the audience. The Disney adults and the girls and the gays are
I don't
going to
think
go
so.
for Wicked. And then you have the masked gays who want the beefcakes on screen. They're going to go, and the straight guys are going to go for Gladiator.
But I know plenty of people that are going to both. So, I mean, that's why it's really going to be interesting to see how this plays out, you know, next week.
Done
And
it like Barbenheimer and had it dual bill, you know?
I'll take your word for it, but as viewers know, I always say, instead of seeing this movie, just watch more Spartacus. There was full frontal in that Roman story, so.
Well, I do want to say something about Denzel Washington because Denzel Washington is kind of one of the spokespeople involuntarily for PragerU. Whenever they're trying to run a conservative story and they say, you know, actors should shut up and do whatever their job is, they will put up Denzel Washington as the pinnacle of what a man is. And they put him with quotes, like if they want to know what's going on with the police, they're like, Denzel Washington, who played a police character in one of these movies, said this, you know? So I cannot wait next week to post that video in the PragerU.
oh my God, I can't wait. You've got to let me know.
You're a braver man than me. I would never go to those places.
Wow. Or don't go alone.
Somebody has to.
Somebody has to. And thank you, Trini, for doing so. As a nonprofit LGBTQ media organization, we would like to thank our viewers for supporting our mission to tell the stories of the queer community. We would also like to thank the generous support of Jets Pizza. Jets is the LGBTQ community's most popular pizza in South Florida. Pizza does not come with Trini.
Take a look around these streets. Do you really think we woke up one day and said, yeah, the world needs more pizza? Nah, just a better one. Better, like the world's best pizza, Jet's Detroit-style pizza. Hand-pressed and baked to the thickest, crispiest crunch. You're welcome. Now visit jetspizza.com and save. Click on hot deals for special offers in your area. Jets, better because it has to be.
Next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we are broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out television studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral's Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m.
tonight's Queer News headlines with a segment we call LGBTQ Plus 1 Minute News. In LGBTQ 1 Minute News, let's queer up South Florida and Florida. Visit Lauderdale welcomes you to Dania After Dark. Visit Lauderdale invites you to Dania After Dark, dinner at the Hall, Saturday, February 8th, 2025 from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. This intimate culinary event hosted at Dania Beach City Hall Plaza showcases local chefs and flavors. Enjoy a magical evening blending exceptional food, community spirit, and a delightful ambiance. Perfect for LGBTQ foodies and allies. This ticketed event promises unforgettable moments under the stars. Don't miss this chance to savor Dania Beach's finest flavors. Reserve your spot today and make it a night to remember. For more information, visit visitlauderdale.com. You know, we have so many foodies here in South Florida, so this is just one of those events that you grab your friends and you go on over and you just eat to your heartt's desire. I love that.
That sounds fun.
I love to eat.
I love to eat. I love to eat. All right, Bobby, finish us, please.
All right, that's it for today's news for the LGBTQ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Join the conversation on your favorite streaming platform.
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ stories in motion and sound. That is the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, FayWhat! And on behalf of these LGBTQ reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including TriniDaddy, Scott Galvin, Bobby Huen, and Alex Morash. We will see you daily at 8 p.m. To our LGBTQ plus world, we wish you good night.
Buenas noches.